We're talking aeroplane nostalgia this afternoon, remembering your first flights and all that sort of thing. Well, today is the last flight of the last Air New Zealand 767. Coincidentally, the search is on to find and restore all the planes previously flown by Air New Zealand. Paul Brennan has been scouring the globe for old DC-8s and 737s and what have you. And Paul Brennan joins us now. Good afternoon, Paul.
Hey, Mitch. Thanks for having me on.
Good to have you on board, as we say.
So to speak.
Hey, what sort of planes are you looking for?
Okay, we're actually looking for 5 planes, and in order of age, they are the Lockheed Electra. People remember the Electra, and that lives on as the PC-3 Orion in our Air Force service. We are looking for a DC-8, a DC-10, a 737, and a 747, and we've sort of found them all. So they're out there. We know they're there. Now we've got to go get them.
So where are they? I mean, are they scattered around the world? Are they?
Yes, they are. They're all over the place, and I guess that's part of the fascinating story where these things end up. Of course, they all started here in New Zealand. The Electra, the oldest of the 5, is actually the only airworthy one. Can you believe that? It's still being operated in northern Canada by Buffalo Airways. I think there was a series on that company called Ice Pilots. Same company.
Oh, is it the same people as the Ice Pilots?
Exactly. They bought the aircraft off another airline, an Alaskan airline, I think, back in the 90s, and converted it to a firebomber. So it sits on the airport there somewhere, and whenever there's a bush or a forest fire, it's used. So that still flies, which we find quite ironic, considering it's the oldest one.
Yeah.
Then we've got the DC-8. Now, the one we're looking at is the third one that was delivered to Air New Zealand, part of the original order. First one arrived in 65. Our one arrived in 68. It's the only one left. The DC-10 we're looking for is the second to last one delivered. The registration was NZS, delivered in 76. The last one remaining. All the others have been dismantled or destroyed. The 737...
Where is it? Do you know, Paul?
Oh, that's in... Sorry, I should have mentioned. That's in... Okay, so the DC-8 is in Manaus, Brazil, right on the edge of the Amazon jungle.
Oh.
It's been sitting at the airport there for the last 15 years, derelict. It was last used as a freighter. It's got quite an interesting history as a freighter. We'll talk about that one day in that part of the world. But it's sitting there, and we're just going through the final verification that it's still in one piece. It looks very good. We've got the latest image we have is end of January this year. So we're confident that that's all intact, and it's just sitting there. It's basically junk to anyone else. The DC-10 is on the tarmac at Havana Airport in Cuba. Had a friend go through there a week ago and got a picture of it. It's still intact, so we know it's definitely there. The 737, you remember NAC got 3 737s in the late 60s when we went into the jet age here at the domestic airline. And the aircraft that we're looking for is the second one delivered. It was registered NAD. But interestingly, this was the aircraft that operated the first domestic jet service in our history. This actual aircraft. That is on an airfield in a boneyard, or graveyard as we sort of know it, demo yard, in North Carolina. And the first 747 that we got, I think you had someone talking about 747-200 in the previous hour.
Yeah.
The first one that was delivered, NZV, how many OEs started on that plane, I wonder?
Yeah.
That's sitting on the tarmac over in the corner of the airport at Domodedovo Airport in Moscow. So that's where they are.
So okay, so you've located them. So what's the plan? Will you try to cut, if you buy them, will you contact them? Are you hoping they'll be given to you, or are you going to buy them, or what?
Here's the plan. For the DC-8, we're talking with the Brazilian Embassy in Wellington. We're having some great engagement, and it looks like we've got great cooperation there. And you can imagine the cultural significance of this, because I see these aircraft as modern-day equivalents to the great ancestral canoes. That's what they have done for our modern nation. They've transported our culture, our people across the world.
That's an amazing way to look at it. Yeah, you're right.
Well, that's exactly
absolutely.
what they are.
Yeah.
Those canoes were more than just hollowed out pieces of wood.
Yeah.
They were functionally that, but they represented it much more than that. Same with these aircraft in our view. So the plan is to secure them, because there's a great quote from a Qantas engineer who restored one of their planes. He said, airliners don't hang around long enough to be appreciated. Usually they put out a service and they're recycled into cans of Coke, is the joke.
Because they're beautiful. Because aircraft are such beautiful objects, aren't they?
Well, they're commercial machines in the end. And once an airline, like today, Air New Zealand's finished with a 767, given great service, By the way, they're still making that brand new at Boeing. It's still in production.
Really?
Oh, yeah, it's still going. And the US Air Force will be receiving the 767 as their new tanker model. So there'll be another few hundred made yet. So that's like having a 1978 car still in production. Think of it that way.
Yeah.
But once the airlines are finished with them, they're basically of no value to them unless they have yielding or yieldable parts. But these aircraft are so old that hardly any of the types are flying anyway, so there's no parts market. So usually they're just, a demolition yard will buy them and they'll be melted down. Remarkably, incredibly, against all odds, there's one copy of each of these types, originals, delivered to our airline. Remember, they're our birds because they were made for us.
Yeah.
And they're still there. That is... I can't tell you the odds of that being that way.
Okay, so is the idea to restore them and get them flying again?
No.
Okay.
It's impossible to have these, except the Electra, which still flies, which is so funny. These are never going to fly again. They're way beyond that condition. But the airframes are intact. So the plan is to secure the airframes, make them safe, so they won't be destroyed, they won't be thrown away or melted down.
Yep.
Because that would be an absolute tragedy. Think about that Maori canoe analogy I just made.
Yep.
So then the next stage is to secure them in terms of either have them donated to us, because remember, they're basically junk to anyone else. It's like a car wreck. Or we find some way of purchasing them. Then we have to dismantle them and take them somewhere to store. Probably in the desert in the US, because you can store them cheaply and have them outdoors. At least they'll be saved. Now, later on, as our tourism industry grows, these will be there, ready to put into a fantastic aviation museum. And these museums, I've been to some of the big ones around the world. I know people who curate them, who work at them. They're massive attractions, huge attractions, but you have to have the right artifacts. These will be the right artifacts. So we don't need to rebuild them immediately. We need to make them safe, and we need to store them.
So that's the plan in the short term, and then you're going to figure out a way to sort of obviously get them back to New Zealand.
Correct.
And then, I suppose, MOTAT would be the natural place, wouldn't it?
Well,
I think you need a new one.
The game, I think it's way beyond their capability because it is. It's an attraction, but it's sort of. I don't mean to put it down or anything, but it's sort of at a hobby level. This is way beyond a hobby level. This is a proper setup.
What was your motivation? How did you get involved in doing this? Why you, Paul? Yeah.
This came out of a very simple little riffing exercise with a couple of other enthusiasts online, speculating the odds on any of these aircraft still surviving. So then, of course, you go on the detective hunt. You go look for pictures, verification, and after a while, remarkably, this picture emerged where these 5 examples, the only ones that are left, are still in existence. And we sort of couldn't believe that. And after making some inquiries and talking to some of the enthusiasts and spotters in these particular areas who are used to seeing what's around, we thought, well, they're probably not too long before they're either going to be cleared off the airport property, because airports are always developing and building buildings, and old airplanes just get in the way. So they'll take them away and they'll throw them away. Now, we need to get to them before that happens, and that's why we've decided to make a move and start this campaign called Bring Our Birds Home. And it's going to be a crowd-funded campaign. We're out on Facebook. We're getting great engagement, thousands of video views. It's video updates and photograph updates, information updates. It's like a treasure hunt.
Yep.
And it'll go in phases. The first phase is to go and do the recce trips around, meet the people, make the relationships, do the deals, and then come through second phase with actually claiming the aircraft either by purchase or donation. And then we'll figure out, we can have them stay at those locations for short to medium term, and then we'll figure out how we can get them into a longer term storage. But I think if we've got through those 2 phases, and New Zealanders are really serious.
The phase 3 will get a lot easier.
I think so.
Yeah. Hey, Paul, it's tremendous, and love the idea. I get it, and all the very best of luck. We'll check in every so often with you, see how you're progressing.
Our crowdfunding effort, which will be on Give a Little, most likely almost 100%. We've been talking to some very knowledgeable crowdfunding people. This is a fascinating area on its own. They've recommended that site. Will run through May, and that will be to fund the recce trips. And on it will be me, an assistant who's very good with money, and a top aviation engineer who can assess the airframes, cut through any BS that might be presented to us, so we'll know exactly where we are. We can't go to any other level, Mitch, unless we do that.
Good on you. Paul Brennan, thank you very much for talking to us this afternoon.